Okay.
There you go.
All right. Well, welcome to the April. I got the meeting minutes in front of me. It says March, and I'm thinking, okay, the April meeting of the Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District. We're going to start out by introducing Matt Kramer, who is joining the board to take Cliff's place. Matt is the Vice President of University Relations. It's a big job at the University of Minnesota. He's also been the CEO of the St. Paul Chamber of Commerce and was named one of the region's most admired CEOs. So we're looking forward to working with you. He's also had a political background with staff for Valenti, and is on quite a few local boards I saw. And he's also been involved significantly with the work on White Bear Lake, with that issue of lake level and how that works. So welcome, Matt. Would you like to say something?
Well, thank you. And thank you so much. I'm very honored to be doing this. I mentioned to Tina earlier today, I'm a Ramsey County resident. I've lived in Shoreview for, it'll be 26 years this year. I was an early adopter of techniques with no actual knowledge. And 26 years ago, I made my first rain gardens off of our house that subsequently turned into nice mud puddles. And so it did take a couple of attempts to figure things out, but longtime admirer of this board and the work that goes into water, both as a sustainable resource, as an asset to the region, and importantly, a really strong element of our quality of life. So I'm looking forward to serving, and thank you so much.
Good,
Great.
thank you.
So I mentioned to Tina, having been notified yesterday, I didn't see the docket, and I feel a little bit embarrassed sitting here. So I'm going to go home and read it at home and tune in from TV. So
that's okay.
try and do something entertaining.
So,
So,
maybe can we do introductions for the staff and
absolutely.
people that are on the screen, and then
Can we what?
do
introductions.
introductions?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I thought you said instructions,
Yeah.
introduction. Yeah, can you?
Yeah, I can call on people.
call them out.
Paige, do you want to start?
Yeah, hi Matt, welcome to the board. I'm Paige Alberg and I am a project manager with Watershed District, and I run our Stewardship grant program and work on other grant related projects.
Matt, you want to go next?
Hi Matt, my name is Matt Domay. I've been at the district for 3 years, and I'm a natural resources technician in our natural resources program.
And Bill?
Welcome, Matt. My name is Bill Bartoje. I'm the natural resources specialist with the Watershed, and I've been with the organization for over 20 years now.
And Lindsay?
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Lindsay. I'm a water quality monitoring technician at the district, and I've been here since 2017.
Lindsay. Nicole?
Hi, welcome. I'm Nicole Soderholm, the permit coordinator for the Watershed. I've been with the district since 2012 when I started as an intern.
And Dave?
Welcome, Matt. I've been with the district for probably about 17, 18 years now. I'm the project coordinator, and I kind of oversee a lot of the construction projects that happen throughout the district.
And Brandon, do you want to go next?
Sure, welcome. My name is Brandon Barnes. I'm sitting and representing Bar Engineering this evening. Bar has the pleasure of serving as the Watershed District Engineer.
Thanks, Brandon. And Lauren?
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Lauren Kirshner, and I'm one of the attorneys for the district. Along with Tracy Gallowitz, we rotate meetings, and she's actually my mom. So we'll clear that out ahead of time for you. Otherwise, you'll say, you seem so similar, and be scratching your head. So that's why we're a mother-daughter duo. So nice to meet you, and nice to have you, Matt.
Thank you.
And that looks like we have some visitors. If you could introduce yourself as well. Angie? Or how about Ed? Ed,
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button.
That's okay.
I'm just a resident on Twin Lake and part of the board for Twin Lake Association. So we just like to listen in and make sure we're up on current events in the watershed district.
Thanks, Angie. Ed?
Hi, Edward Roberts, and I live on Lake Wasso, so I'm particularly interested in the Victoria Shores permit process, and that's why I'm participating or attending, listening tonight. Thank you for all the work you do.
Thanks, Ed. Joe? Joe, are you available to say hello?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm also on Lake Wasso, just trying to stay abreast of things.
Great, thanks for being here.
Is anybody going to make a presentation during visitor comments?
None from me.
Okay, Ed?
No, I was not intending to. Thank you for the opportunity, though.
Sure. Joe?
No.
Okay, all right.
Great.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. We'll
Nice to
talk
meet you.
soon.
Matt. Good luck. Yeah, hurry home. By the way, we post these on YouTube, so you'll be able to watch at your leisure. Okay. Next order of business after that is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
So we got a motion
Yeah,
and a second. We're gonna call roll.
Okay, you don't have to anymore.
I know
since
you
you're
don't,
big,
but
you can- yeah.
okay, on these I'm gonna go. Sometimes I'm
That's
gonna
fine.
call roll and sometimes I'm not. It depends. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Sounds good.
And regarding,
Passes.
not really a change in the agenda, but it would be nice if we took a break. So maybe
Yeah, probably.
7:30, 7:45 when we're in between something.
We'll plan that. We're gonna
We're
get through the
not,
first
we're
part.
not used to.
Yeah.
Sitting around all the time, yeah.
Being able to stand up and
We-
wander around.
We can't just put our picture up and
Yeah.
leave.
Yeah.
It's one of
Sounds
those
good.
things.
Yep.
Okay, consent agenda. Is there anything that needs to be removed from the consent agenda at this point? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move it, that we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Because I have one discussion. I'm gonna vote for it, but I have one discussion. In the bills, there's a person named Kathy Trundle
Mhm.
who gave us back $1,103.44. Who is Kathy and why did she give us back that money?
Gave us back money.
Yeah,
I'll have to look into why it was returned, but Kathy Trundle is one of our education consultants. She works with Sage and does work in schools with Sage.
okay,
So, actually, I don't recall it being a credit, so I'll look at that. And
Okay,
make sure
just-
that that's.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
It's the only time anybody's ever given us any money.
Yeah,
back,
right.
is when I was interested.
Yeah.
Okay, so
It was
we have
like
a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
There was a credit and then a deposit.
Yeah,
Oh,
but they're different.
They are different amounts.
okay, I'll look into that much.
Yeah. I rely on my treasurer to figure.
Yeah.
those things out.
Thank you, Treasurer.
Okay, all in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, consent agenda passes. Item number 4 is visitor comments. There are none, so we'll move on to item number 5, the permit program. And there's one application on there is for Victoria Shores. And Nicole, would you care to talk us through this?
Sure. I know the board is well aware of this development. We've talked about it at numerous meetings. And then the board was also copied on comments during the environmental review process. So yeah, this developer first applied for a permit actually over a year ago, and it's been postponed for environmental review, which was completed. The EAW was completed last fall, and it was approved by the city, which is the agency overseeing that process, in December of last year. Last month, we were told by city staff that the final plat was approved. And the plat is kind of a big driver in the site design. So the engineering team came back with, we kind of restarted that review process in terms of stormwater erosion sediment control. So, and I know that this is a long cover sheet, so I'd be happy to answer any questions. I think the board's aware that there's a wetland fringe on the lakeshore that was delineated, so that's been a hot topic of interest, both to our staff and to residents that live on the lake and around Lake Wasso. Are there any questions specifically that I can answer about? Go ahead.
Sorry, Nicole, go ahead.
Well, I will also add that they're requesting a variance for temporary buffer disturbance, the upland buffer. So not within the delineated wetland, but in order to install the filtration outlet pipe.
Okay. Does anybody else besides me have comments on it?
I do.
Okay, go.
Could you speak to that partnership with the HOA mentioned? Could you expand on that relationship, please, Nicole?
The relationship between the HOA and the developer?
Yeah, well, so forgive me, let me walk that back. So it sounds like some of the waterfronts and the area is going to be managed by some of the HOA stuff or the HOA group. And I'm curious, when they're working out their arrangements, working with Ramsey, working with the city, we work with the city, and then the HOA, I assume, works with the city. I'm curious on what kind of influence or what kind of review we may have on some of their incorporations on what they define for wetland disturbance and the like.
So the developer will be doing the buffer disturbance for the stormwater facilities. They'll be installing, they'll be grading, they'll be installing the stormwater facilities. They will be, doing other utilities, sidewalk, and then they're also going to be installing signage at the wetland buffer. But you're correct. Partially what came out of the EAW process was that the plat was changed so that the private single parcels are no longer considered riparian. The HOA owns the outlot, essentially, of the lakeshore. They also own the outlet where the stormwater facilities are, which they will be responsible for maintaining. As far as future docks and things like that, I don't believe the developer is doing that themselves. So that would be a future HOA, when that's formed, responsibility. As far as the buffer agreement and the stormwater maintenance agreement, those both go with the land. So the developer will be signing those, but the responsibility transfers to the future landowners.
And my understanding is that they're only allowed to put in 3 docks. One, the 5 houses that are on there, they get 1 dock per 2 houses. And then like HOA dock. And there's going to be a boardwalk put in to keep people. Now our buffer zone is 75 feet, is that right?
Average.
Yep. Average, yeah.
5 feet. So the only exception they're asking for is for 1 day to work in that buffer zone, not to work in the wetlands, but just in the buffer zone itself.
Right.
Where the outlet is in the buffer.
Where the outlet is in the buffer zone.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted.
No, that's kind of where I was curious, is I couldn't remember the number of docks.
Yeah.
And I know the HOA is going to be responsible for monitoring docks, monitoring things that happen there. And so I don't understand if we influence any of the HOA guidances, governance, or the like? That's kind of what I was curious about.
Great question.
Sure. So we don't regulate design or criteria for docks. That's not within our scope. The DNR does, so they'll be responsible for following state requirements for any future boardwalk and or dock placement, but we would not be regulating that. We would be regulating the stormwater infrastructure and the wetland buffer.
And the agreements that we have in place will be held with the HOA for the buffer as well.
And so the agreements
Right.
will be part of each deed that goes with
Yeah,
this.
so each land, so both the outlot with the HOA as well as the single homes. Yeah.
Do we have a thought process around frequency of inspection of this, since it's critical?
Yeah, it's the inspection frequency in the agreement. Nicole,
By district staff?
Yes.
or city, I guess, either one.
No, and that's standard for our stormwater maintenance agreements. We will be inspecting stormwater BMPs. So in this case, I mean, we've never required a wetland buffer maintenance agreement before. So in this case, we could, while we're inspecting the stormwater facilities, check out the buffer zones to make sure that that agreement is being followed. The agreement also allows for staff to access that area and to enforce that agreement, enforce restoration if the agreement is breached. But yeah, given for stormwater BMPs anyway, given staff time and resources, we don't specify an inspection frequency on behalf of our staff.
And Nicole, if I could just jump in on that point. So the agreements, the stormwater maintenance agreement and the wetland buffer agreement would both be recorded against each parcel. So it'd be of record in the county property records as to the parcels that they apply to. As far as including inspection timing in those agreements, my fear is that we wouldn't want to create any space for the district if one of those inspections was missed, for a landowner to then say, well, you don't care about coming because you missed the last one, and so how do you seek to enforce it now? I think it's probably a better idea to say the district has the right to access and inspect at reasonable times and at reasonable frequency, and that way you don't risk any potential waiver if there isn't a strict schedule applied to. So I think that schedule belongs somewhere within the district to make sure that it's happening, but I don't think that the agreement is probably the right place for that.
I agree with that. That wasn't kind of what I was looking at. I was looking more for our internal process, since this is a high profile development, to make sure, like it says in here, that they can only use vegetation pathways going out to the docks, and somehow to make sure that that actually happens. And it kind of goes to another question that I had, Nicole, is that in the special provisions, there's a lot of City of Roseville. Will we be working with them closely as they develop these things to make sure, again, that they have our expertise in what they're doing?
Yeah, the stormwater maintenance agreement has historically been a 3-signatory document. So it's signed by the developer or the permit applicant, the city, and district staff. So we mimicked that process for the wetland buffer agreement. Like I said, we've never had a wetland buffer agreement before, but the city and Watershed wanted to partner on that as well. I think it just helps with enforcement and inspection, and it is less agreements, honestly, that need to be recorded against the property if they can be combined. The BMP operations and maintenance plan, we typically request a plan, and the city does as well. So essentially it's going to be the same document. That doesn't actually get signed or recorded, but the stormwater maintenance agreement and the buffer agreement would both be signed by all three parties.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments at this point? I just want to make sure that the concerns of the people living in the area, they've approved the plating, they've changed the plating a lot. I watched the Roseville City Council meeting where they went through it, and all seemed to be pretty well done. They made significant, EAW had a big effect on how that is platted and what they do. They don't have those hockey stick lots anymore. So I think we've gone about as far as we can with at this point. I just want to make sure ongoing we keep the concerns of the people living in that area and the wetlands to make sure that they stay the way that they are, and the people that move in there don't all of a sudden decide they're going to do something. I want to make sure we catch them at it if they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not that I think they're bad people.
No, and as always, the residents can contact us too if they
Right.
have any concerns, and we
Right.
can check it out. So
Right. Do we do the buffer signs?
We have provided some examples, and that's one of the special provisions because the watershed and the city want to make sure that the language is appropriate, that it communicates what we wanted to communicate, but the developer is responsible for submitting that signage detail for review and approval, and they would be responsible for installation of that signage.
Okay, any other comments on these? I think
Just Nicole, you said they're gonna submit it. On the special provisions, just say they'll submit it. They don't say it has to be approved.
Well, it won't get crossed off, or the permit won't get issued if they need to submit a revised signage detail.
Sounds good.
If we don't accept it, we'll keep that provision open.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Any other discussion?
Does the public play a role in providing comments or a review of said agreement?
Nope, that was done between, well, with our legal staff and city council. And the developer has verbally, well, actually written, agreed to sign the agreement. So submitted confirmation via email that they intend to sign it before we even brought it to you, because we have the whole draft agreement already spelled out. And if for some reason the developer decides that they don't like the conditions of that agreement, like that was dependent on asking you guys for approval, that was already dealt with. So they said, you know, that we confirm that we're going to sign this agreement and that we accept the conditions of it. I didn't want anything to change in a major way after bringing it to you, especially after this process that we've gone through. So I have received that confirmation.
Nicole, is this a process that you think we would record down and document as something that we might do ongoing? Not for other folks, but for, you know, future programs and permits?
Are you referring to the wetland buffer?
Yeah,
agreement,
you
or-
made reference to it being the first time ever to do it.
Yeah. You know, I haven't given that any thought, but I certainly will. You know, our rules, when a development is happening, our rules, you know, specify where the buffer is and that it's no disturb. So that's obviously enforced during construction and before the permits close and escrows return. So things don't get built in the buffer that we didn't approve. As far as changes happening to the landscape after the fact, I guess I'm not sure.
Yeah,
That hasn't Yeah, go ahead, Tina.
Something we can discuss about future, because right now our rules only apply during up to the construction completion point for buffers. So, but some cities have stricter requirements. So for instance, the city of Maplewood would still govern over what happens in the buffers, but our rules wouldn't. So this is quite a change.
Yeah, this buffer agreement was driven with this project in particular because of staff's concern about all the accesses they were showing through the buffer when it's a no disturb, and we want to make sure that the development's meeting the intent of those rules, so it's specifying what activities are allowed. This is a unique situation where we expected people to traverse through the wetland buffer. Most developments, that would never be the case. You know, it's on the outskirts of the developments, but this is kind of like the buffer was sort of in the, you know, we expected activity to happen within the buffer. So we really wanted to be clear about what we would allow and what we would not allow. And we also, you know, are responding to residents' concerns about the aesthetic and the activity changes that were going to be happening on the lake, changes to the wetland and the wetland fringe. So that was something that made us feel more comfortable that we had something written about what was allowed and what wasn't, and that the city was on board as well with enforcing that.
Larry has chatted and asked if he could provide a comment at this point.
Yep. It's a little unusual for us, but go ahead. Yeah, Ed, did you want to?
Larry, thank you so much. Firstly, I applaud what you've done with this unique wetland buffer agreement, and I understand it's the first time. But also because it is the first time, I would hope that the district could put in place some parameters that make sure it is inspected with some frequency until we get comfortable about the routine and the process, and that we can use this as a way to document perhaps a future process and policy that perhaps is going to be implemented elsewhere by the district. So having said that, I understand Lauren's comment about let's not get hostage to a frequency that we mandate in the agreement, but at the same time, can we err on the side of frequency, at least in the early stages? This is where the huge number of residents had the greatest of concern in terms of the impact to the wetland. So I think I'd also be asking, how could the district report that out so the citizens who were so concerned understand that it's being followed through on, and they're also getting some answers or some checks and balances that it's being inspected and that things are being carried out. And I also would underline that one of the greatest concerns was what impact would happen during the construction process, as well as in the transition process to the homeowners, and ensuring they take the right responsibility when that transition happens towards the wetland buffer agreement. So I applaud everything that's being done. I just want to emphasize that we document and we find a way of communicating the inspection so that people understand that it is being done, and it's being done on a robust and routine method.
Okay. Normally, Nicole reports as they're building out a site, there's inspections while they're building, and that would give you a record. But that's where one of my questions was, working with Roseville on it. They're probably more appropriate to inspect it and feed back to us at some point.
So during construction, Nicole, do you want to talk about the process for inspection during construction, and then we can talk about after construction?
Yeah. District staff inspect the site weekly or every other week during construction. Roseville city staff also inspect the site. So that will be inspected throughout construction, throughout the entire active permit process. I agree with Ed that it should be a priority to inspect it after the permit's closed years from now, probably. We're you know, keeping up at least with the new homeowners. And I can work with the city and sharing that responsibility because they're a signatory on the agreement as well. So we could try to work out a system where, you know, it's not district staff going out every time post permit closure. But we also do, like I said, do those stormwater BMP inspections on the filtration facilities. So we would certainly inspect at that time as well, since we're already there looking at the underground and the above ground filtration basin. But yeah, I agree that, you know, particularly in the first couple years after the permit's closed out, just to make sure that the conditions of the agreement are being followed, and I can work with the city on that.
And we have a inspection form that's filled out when the site is inspected. That's often shared or is shared to the city to make sure the city is up to speed on things. If we had a representative, if Ed wanted to be, let's say, the representative, we could add you to the email list for that project so that you would also get those inspection notifications and reports.
Okay.
I have a subsequent question that I was trying to look on the map out of curiosity. I'm concerned that a homeowner, not out of bad behavior or as a mean thing, will forget about inspections, we'll forget about it. And I get that. Can this property or the inspection be conducted from the body of water? What do we do in those particular situations where there is a dispute or a disagreement? What do we do then?
Do you want to talk about our enforcement process? And maybe Lauren can jump into.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused on the question. Are you talking about the wetland buffer or inspections by the landowners? Is that what I heard you say?
No, the inspection of the wetland buffer and the BMP and just, so we're building into the wetland buffer agreement that we're doing inspections, right? That inspections will happen. Those inspections, there's an expectation that the landowner remembers that an inspection is still permitted per the agreement. And there's a chance that that particular homeowner will forget that the inspection is something that they've signed themselves to. And so we're gonna run into conflicts. And so my question then becomes, is there other means of conducting said inspection at the frequency we desire if there is a conflict that arises?
I don't plan on inspecting by boat. The agreement does give us access rights. I don't foresee that happening.
Well, and the part closest to the water is an HOA. It's an outlot, right? So it's not their
right. It's not a private parcel that is adjacent to the lake.
A pretty robust permit inspection process for these stormwater BMPs, and I don't know if we've ever run into any issues. And you know, we always come vest. You know, we have our vests and our truck lights. You know, we look a little more official, but then we also have the agreement, you know, available to be able to show people if they are questioning.
I just remember something similar to this in the past, and I remember we took the initiative to like send letters to all the homeowners to say, just a reminder, this is what's going on and we will be inspecting. And maybe it would be good, like when you're going to inspect a month before, say, hey, just a reminder, this is what is going on and we're coming to inspect.
Yeah, and we can send that to the HOA, probably would be the most effective way, and then it would get passed on to the homeowners.
Yeah, and we would work with the city on that. Lately, you know, housing developments haven't been built all at once, that it'll just be a house, you know, at a time. I can't speak for the developer and what their plans are, but I anticipate that people may move in while, you know, other parts of the site are still being constructed. So that would also be a good point to catch people and talk to them about that.
And of course, citizens can always let us know too if they see something that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a report a problem feature on our website, and in our staff directory, I'm listed there. Tina and I have both had contact with a number of residents about this project in particular. Yeah, I'm always willing to take calls and run out there if there's a concern or a complaint.
So hopefully, Ed, that addresses your issues. I think we'll be vigilant. We know the issues there. And we'll be as vigilant as we can be within the system we work, as will the DNR and the city of Roseville. So, any other comments on the permit?
No, but I'd like to thank you so much for those comments. And I'd also like to recognize Tina and Nicole, especially because I know through this whole process over a year and a half, I think, they have done their darndest to make sure everybody's aware of the ins and outs of this complicated project. And I think everybody from the Wasso Association standpoint and the people that were so concerned about the wetlands have appreciated their guidance and comments in understanding the implications. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the permit with the,
I'll move to approve the permit, the special provisions and variance requests.
I'll second.
second? Any further discussion?
Just one comment. I just noticed a couple of I love this, what we do here and when we do, but the one thing that really brings me sadness is when I see like the last pristine bits of woods in our watershed district getting developed. It's just so sad. And I know we don't have there's nothing we can do about it unless we're personal billionaires and can go preserve them, which would be my goal one day. But it's just sad. It's sad to see these pristine lands go.
Yeah, but I think we have had an effect on this one in particular in bringing issues up that minimize that, because you can't stop private property development, but you can, I think we've influenced it as much as we can. And you guys have done a good job doing that too, so thank you.
Agreed.
Okay, if no further comments, all in favor of approving the 2212 permit, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. Passes unanimously. Okay, enforcement action report.
Yeah, inspections are ramping up again as the weather warms, although not as warm as we would like. But yeah, we are having a number of permits being issued at the moment and starting to do some initial walkthroughs. So other sites are itching to start, and Mary's been out there doing a lot of inspections. We did have a lot of just sort of random collaboration meetings this month as well with various public partners. Yeah, otherwise I don't have anything that sticks out unless you have any questions.
I had one question. In your listing of all the things you were doing, it says you had a wetland A trail feasibility meeting for the Ramsey County Parks. What was that all about?
Yeah, they are exploring different possibilities. It's very early in the process, so it's just kind of a kickoff to nothing's been decided or designed. We haven't seen any plans. Just kind of bringing the partners together.
What they want to know?
So they're starting the design process for the trail system around Wetland Day. And so that was the kickoff meeting. So they have a design team on that they brought in, and then we were there, and also the
Shoreview.
City Shoreview and the Stewardship.
Met Council.
Met Council, thank you, Storm Sewer. I just blanked on
Yeah.
which
Oh,
age
yeah.
Sewer guys, yeah.
or the
A lot of consultants too.
yeah, so there's lot in there, but it was a kickoff, just to bring those partners all together to discuss.
Okay.
They didn't have a timeline. I mean, I think it's a long process that they're just kicking off. So.
Okay.
And I think they were saying they are aiming to kick off public engagement in the summer sometime.
End of the summer. Okay. Okay. Just curious.
And my comment, Nicole, was it was so nice to see so many permits closed.
Yeah, really.
But then you
I
said
agree.
a lot of new ones.
Yeah, I know the list always like holds steady, but at like the number of open permits. But yeah, I like to get some of these, especially old ones, closed out where I'm just waiting on something so trivial and they just keep not responding. So I've been a little more annoying when I had some time this month. Trying to get some old permits closed and off our list. But yeah.
That's great.
Good job. Yeah. Nice to clean up things. I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments on the enforcement action report? That brings us to the stewardship grant program. Looks like you're about halfway through your budget.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And actually, I realized I forgot to include the Lake Wasso restorations as part of the pending approval, which we'll talk about next. So that would come out of the Shoreline Restoration Fund. So I'll probably just add a one for one project there, but that's about 170,000, which brings us to about 376,000 if I did my math right. So I'll keep an eye on our budget. I haven't been that low on money this early in the season in quite a while. So it's good to see. In the past years, if we hit that point where we need to cut off large scale projects, we can definitely do that, but we always make sure that we have funding for homeowners that come in and want to do projects. So I'll definitely keep an eye on that.
Didn't we carry over some money from your budget last year?
So we always have, we always have carryover, but the budget is what
Budget is
we
the
plan
budget.
1 million.
Yeah, it's not like Paige's money.
Yeah.
I do like that we're getting it spent for these good projects.
Right.
Yeah, we've already had a number of site visit requests come in, so it'll be a busy year, I think.
Yeah, it's probably more typical to get the big projects get planned at the beginning of the year so that they can get constructed, and then some of the homeowner ones will come later.
Well, and these have been in the works for a while.
That's true too.
And just when you add in, of course, I guess we'll know next time how much the Lake Wasso restoration is going to cost. You took away my comment. Thank you. Just take the star off of the $8,000 too, because I looked at that and I was trying to figure out how it changed.
Yeah, sorry, I was making sure you're paying attention.
It's okay. Yeah, I'll just make sure I'm reading these things very carefully. Okay, good. Thank you. Now we move on to item number 7, which are the action items. And the first one is the Lake Wasso Shoreline Restoration Project.
Yep, I'll pass it right over to Paige to do the highlights on that.
Yeah, so this is similar to what we've seen in the past for Snail Lake and then Twin Lake. So now our next phase is Lake Wasso. So this phase we focused on kind of the north side. So I think all the addresses are the Shoreview side. So we had 10 residents. We were hoping for a few more, but some of them that we met with, actually Joe was one of them, but some of the shorelines just weren't conducive for our type of project. So a lot of those people are looking at doing some native plantings on their own. So maybe going through our cost share project or cost share program, but didn't qualify for the shoreline restoration. So it's good. We met with a number of people, had a lot of interest. There will be a little bit of regrading involved. The kind of northeast side, I guess, gets a lot of ice heave damage. So they have some pretty steep walls that are created from that. So we'll do some regrading. And then there's some riprap that was required on these sites just to stop some of that erosion. But yeah, overall, pretty excited. Everyone seems excited about it.
And I think we asked this question before about Twin Lakes, but if somebody sees things that they like and want to get back into the process, they can do that at some point. Is that right?
Yes, new homeowners. Yeah, absolutely. You know, we actually had, I think, 3 or 4 on Snail that are going through planning now. So they can come through just our standard stewardship grant program, and we can help them through plan design and help them select a contractor.
I was a little surprised more people didn't take advantage of it. It's free money.
Yes, yeah.
Not for
Hopefully
us.
they'll see the good. Hopefully they'll see the good projects and then call us. And then we'll continue outreach on the other parts. I have to decide the next phase of Wasso to do for 2023, but we'll start that outreach over the summer.
Okay.
I like the amount of, I'm happy that we outreach. I was kind of curious, there's a park and a beach in that area. Is there any plans to do any kind of shoreline restoration in those areas when pertinent?
Yes. Yeah, Bill, do you want to talk about that?
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's our major ecological restoration project this year. So we'll be addressing the shoreland from the beach all the way to the boat ramp. So in total, we're looking at just over, I think it's around 730 feet of shoreline with an average width of 15 feet. So it's a really sizable shoreline buffer that we'll be creating there. So it'll be a really nice amenity for the park and an awesome demonstration. So I think that project will most likely pull in a number of shoreline owners as well, and probably take advantage of Paige's project next year, we hope.
Okay, any other discussion? Do I have a motion to approve requesting the bids on the Lake of Wasso Shoreline Restoration Project?
I move we approve the preliminary design, estimated costs, and proposed project schedule, and direct staff to finalize the design and bidding documents and advertise the project for bid. Thank you for spelling that out, Tina.
You can just say second by saying second.
Yeah, second's easy.
Do I have a second? We did, okay. Good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Got that one? Now the 2022 targeted retrofit projects.
I think Paige can just keep on going.
Just keep
Yeah, just spending lots of money tonight. So these are our 2022 targeted retrofits that you guys have seen a little bit about in past packets, but this is for St. Pascal's Church and Mounts Park Academy. So both great partners. We're excited to be working with them. They were identified kind of through our annual field visits. And actually Mounts Park Sage has worked with a lot over the past years, and they do great work, a lot of activities for the kids outside. I know Matt has helped with some maintenance out there too. So they take really good care of their projects and are excited to have this project. And the person from BAR, Andrea, I can never say her last name right, Waddell, she actually graduated from Mounts Park Academy. So she helped with the design and really took advantage of what she knew about the school and incorporated that outdoor classroom area that the school will be covering that portion. And then St. Pascal's, they have been great to work with. They basically knew, I don't want to say knew nothing about stormwater, but really did not know a lot about stormwater management and why they should be interested in these types of projects. So it's been a fun education experience, and they're really excited to work with Lauren on communication and Sage through ongoing education.
Okay. It kind of looked, and I am glad you included the rating of these. It looked like St. Pascal's was heavy on community involvement, even though it's extremely expensive in cost per pound. But Mounts Park was mainly water quality, and it's a lot less. Although I think it's going to be a better project, but I appreciate putting that information in there about how they were rated, why they are at the top of the list.
You beat me to my comment. I was gonna say something very similar.
Yeah, yeah. So any other discussion about that? It looked like good. It's nice to do it in school, so we get some. And when will these be done? Like in the summertime when students aren't there, or?
Yeah, so for sure, Mounds Park, we wrote in there that construction can only happen between, I think they get out of school early June and then they start end of August. So that's their construction window. St. Pascal's has a little more leeway. They're kind of an ongoing, like earlier, maybe K through, I don't know, first or second grade. So they have a little bit more leeway with when we work there. So we're hoping that Mounds Park is done as soon as possible, just because usually when we give them until, Labor Day, they are working that Friday before school starts. So we'll make sure that's done early, and then St. Pascal's might be a little bit later into the year, because that work can happen a little bit later, kind of like we did at Target with those tree trenches. They can happen later in the season.
This may sound like a strange request, but is it possible to get some of the students involved in the construction? That was more what my thought was, is that they're going to leave school and they're going to come back and there's going to be a garden there.
Yeah. So I don't know about the construction. We can talk to the teachers about that and see if there are students around in the summer, but definitely they'll be involved in the planting. Sage will be working on coordinating that, trying to get them out in the rain gardens right away. And then also they do a lot of their own maintenance. So doing spring and fall visits, and then she'll work with one of the science teachers there on curriculum to make sure that's incorporated for them.
So they'll do the construction during the summer, but they'll do the planting as soon as the kids are back.
Okay, that'll help.
Yeah.
Okay. And are we going to advertise it to the schools so that they know that this is happening? Like if the kids want to come back and watch or something like that?
Yeah, we
I
can
think it's a
work.
great opportunity
Yeah.
for them to see something happening.
Yeah, we can work with the school administration on notification updates. They send updates to their families.
Get them more involved.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on these?
I'll move we approve the preliminary design, estimated costs and proposed project schedule, and direct staff to finalize the design and bidding documents and solicit bid proposals. Second.
Any further discussion?
I really like how this report was put together,
Yes.
just as a reference.
It was good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor of approving, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, item moves through. That was good. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, West Vadnais Lake, next steps.
So as I outlined in the memo, after our last meeting last month, when we met with a subset of the Blamo board, one of the action items was to come back with some information about the work that has been done around West Vadnais Lake and kind of thinking about future maintenance needs and looking at responsibilities and how that looks. I think that was some of the information that Blamo was still interested in discovering. So I wanted to provide this to you and have this discussion with you all before I pass this on to Blamo. In my memo, you'll see at the end, I kind of got to a point, even as I was writing this, that we're at a point where we say, if you want to move forward with a boundary change, let's do it. Let's take that next step and notify them of our intent to do that, and then work through that response. And I don't think that they are. I think it was clear that that's clearly one of the steps that we could take next. So I think logistically, we've talked about this a lot. It makes sense. I think it's clear that we can request that. I would be interested to see then if Philadelphia brings that to his full board, you know, the response that we get back. But I think that's kind of the response we need. We need to hear back from them on a specific request like that.
Yeah, it seemed to me at the meeting that a lot of the information was kind of new to them. So I thought we would have a two-part process where we'd send them all this information and kind of get the facts straight between us. And then they might respond with more questions or other things, and then we would decide what we wanted to do. So I'm not quite sure if we should jump ahead to a decision or recommendation or not, because I think it's important that we lay out absolutely everything out for them, and maybe you draft the letter and we review it, which is what I thought we were going to do. And there's even things like about the tax value of it. How many parcels? We thought 5 to 7. They said 45 or 48. I mean, does that make a difference to them? That's something that we've wondered about before too. So I'm interested in what the other board members think our next step should be, if we should lay out the letter and the recommendation at this point. Of course, if we don't, given their meeting schedule, which is one of the problems we have, then it delays it even longer. I don't know.
I'm of the mind of going in, we should, I think as part of it, it's a letter, and I think of it as you go in with, hey, why don't we start that conversation about a boundary change? That's my opinion. I think the important part is not just to pass the letter. It'd be wonderful if we could go and also present some sort of, here's what led us to that particular decision. Here's the what's in it for Falamo, for this particular, if we make this particular change. And I'm thinking in my head, and I believe maybe this is why Tina provided these two options, was you asked for the boundary change, and you might end up getting the boundary change, or you'll get option 2. It seems like one of those two options are going to be the direction things go. So I propose to go full bore and say, hey, we would propose a change, knowing that there could be a compromise.
Yeah, I agree with that thinking. That's where I'm coming from too, is that when you look through everything that's been done, the issues that we have now that we've added the Grass Lake area to the watershed, and we got this halfway in between. And with all due respect, they're just not investing that much in West Vadnais right now. When you look at the stuff in here, and there are some questions I have about the numbers that you have, but the bottom line is we're spending all of our money on West Vadnais Lake, one way or the other. And it should be in the watershed district, because like I said before, and you like it, it's like playing an organ. You know, Dave or somebody's going to have all these little apps when the big rain comes and things like this. They're going to be balancing things up and down. All of a sudden we have this one area, even if we have an agreement with them, you might run into something in the middle of a storm that isn't covered by the agreement. It would be better off to have it. I'm not sure. I would like to see their delineation of where they get their 45 properties.
Yeah, that's in the whole sub-watershed. So that's not just adjacent to the lake. There are other parcels. A lot of them are parkland though, so that they don't all produce tax value to them.
So would the whole sub-watershed go then?
Yes, yeah, the whole sub-watershed. So any water that would flow in, and actually part of the sub-watershed is already in our district. So there's parcels west of Rice Street that are already in our district, but it's mostly to the north. So there's a little neighborhood up there, as well as most of the parkland between that neighborhood and the lake. But actually I should have included that. You're right. The parcels, and I can easily get that value too. And
what I'm thinking, hearing everyone, I'm fine with it, but I'm thinking maybe you draft the letter and have it go out under Larry's signature as the head of the board.
Sure.
Requesting a boundary change
and all the documentation.
Letting
We've
them know.
already sent some of those reports.
Yeah.
Letting them know all the stuff that we've done. I think in here you've captured, I think, and I'm saying I think because I had a little trouble identifying, but the cost for the EAW, that took forever. But it wasn't all their fault or our fault. A lot of it had to do with the DNR. But it took, it took forever to get that done. But the concern more isn't that we're investing in it, but it's that it's a critical part, as far as I'm concerned, of our watershed district, and it ought to be with us instead of with somebody else. Because I mean, you look at anything that we've done there is more than their budget for next year.
Yep.
Or this year, rather, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think the letter, you know, we've looked back, we've kind of accounted for most of everything from the past, but really looking forward to what we see as a potential need in the future, I think is the key in that request. And,
I think so too. So do we have the lake level monitor in there? Is there a lake level monitor in
it's
there?
in our district, but we have one it's on the Triangle wetland area.
Oh, it is in the triangles and where it's at, okay. So it's sort of saying.
Oh, it's actually, it's in the main area. That's for our lake level station.
Right, it's north of the,
It's in the
you're right.
corner
You're
by
right.
the.
Yeah.
It was a more representation of the true lake level than having it on the corner just because of the pipes. So it made more sense to have it in the big lake.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
So we'll need to add that in.
Yeah, that cost needs to be in there.
Oh, I think I put the construction cut, or did I? Maybe I didn't include the construction. Yeah, I can add that, make sure it's added.
And what about the cost? Was the cost in there for the core borings that we did to show that West Vadnais was not connected to East Vadnais?
I only included construction costs, except for the EAW. I did our engineering costs for that process.
Because it costs us quite a bit.
So I did not do any of the costs for the study, but yeah, I was trying to figure out, you know, what's relevant, because I was again looking towards the future of what the future maintenance and needs might be. And so it didn't seem applicable necessarily to say we spent this much money on a study that determined we weren't going to do a project, you know, like it was part of that process. And we would have done it whether it was in Venice or
well,
not.
we did it. We did it because we were looking for solutions for West Vadnais.
Which was overflowing.
Which was overflowing.
No, I know, yeah.
And we were trying to figure out if we could dump it into East Vadnais.
Right,
We had to clean it up, or whether we
Yep.
just go in there. And it was one of the things that they requested specifically in the meeting was this report. So they ought to know what the report costs us.
Sure, I mean, I can definitely pull that together.
It's more an awareness on their part.
Yeah.
That we're investing a lot in this area already.
Mhm.
And it's, you know, it's just that in some ways we're pretending like it's our own, it just belongs to them.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, part of that is that it's our water that comes into it, that
Yeah.
floods it, and then we're trying to get it out. So I think there's always been an understanding of, you know, how this, all this all works together. But
On the other hand, their water held back our water, which affected the flooding.
well, not much water actually comes from West Vadnais, you know, some watershed.
No, but it
yeah.
was kind of making it all the same.
Right,
now.
right.
So
Yeah.
it's all connected.
Yeah, I can
which is
certainly
why.
add that study cost as well.
And maybe just line that out to them. Here's all the work that we've been doing in the area. Here's why we want it. And I have to say the meeting went a little differently than I thought it was going to. But I think it turned out to be really positive that they just stepped right up and started asking about a boundary change. Rather than how can we work together.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think the people that were in the room at least understood what was going on. Then it has to do with interacting with their full board, which again, it sort of shows the issue of, we went through this with them in a meeting at the beginning of March. We have another meeting in April. They don't have a meeting until the end of April. If they have questions, we can answer them at the beginning of May, but they won't be able to respond to us and unless they have an emergency meeting until the end of June. And that's kind of a little bit of the issue that we're facing with this. Be a lot better, I think, if we had it in our district.
Another thing I liked about the way you laid this out, Tina, is you put the years, which shows that starting
length
at
of
least in
time.
2018.
Yeah.
This isn't something that just came up.
Right.
It's
Right.
been a lot of study and watching it in piece by piece and working on the pieces that are within our district and looking at it as a whole. So I think that's good.
And I agree with Val that I think that it would be good to also highlight how it benefits them.
Yeah, agreed.
I was gonna, thank you for bringing that point up again, because I was gonna say there are a lot of quality things that we're gonna now have to consider with it, but I do think it benefits them because we can then also look at flood prevention. It's like comprehensive care. I like that.
Right. So what do we want for an action step on this? That you'll prepare a letter?
Yep, so if you're comfortable with me preparing a letter for Larry's signature with the items that we've just discussed.
Right.
And Larry obviously will review
Right.
Before he signs it.
Right.
And but the letter will contain the items that we've listed here, as well as some other discussion points about the future and why we feel it's necessary to pursue the boundary change. And yeah, I think what you said too about going to their meeting or offering to come to their meeting to.
I think it shows goodwill because that's where this is coming from.
Yeah. Yeah, even if they want somebody to come to the meeting that they're gonna have at the end of this month, we can probably work that in somehow, so.
And all of this is gonna make it easier for Lorianne to do the legal part.
Right, yeah.
Because all the background will be all nicely laid out already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for thinking of me, Diane.
Yeah, I was looking at Tina's stuff and thinking, there you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Billing hours up. Okay, so we need a motion? or
I think we
just-
should have a motion so that it gives you the authority to sign and send the letter on their behalf as well.
Right, okay, so I have a motion to do such a thing.
Motion, oh man, this is a long one. So I move to have Tina record a record and provide the VLAMO justification for a boundary change to be signed by the
Okay, good. Second, okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. That was good. I'll take a break.
Yeah, we don't have a lot left.
No, we don't.
It's a good time for a break if you'd like, or if you're ready to keep going, we can keep going.
I don't have to go to the bathroom yet,
It's
but
up
I
to
don't
you.
mind if we take a break. Usually I need to do at least one during our meeting.
I'll tell you what, we'll go on if somebody feels that they need a break. I don't, oddly enough. If it gets to be too long, which I hope it won't, we'll take a break someplace else, but.
Yeah, we have no
We're in a good place.
presentation.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure we got everybody taken care of who was online for special projects, so we did that, so.
We're cruising through. We're good.
So the next item is the attorney report. And Lorianne, just so you know, the first item on the board issues, policies and operations, meeting attendance. And the reason why that's on there is because at the last meeting, your mom promised us, tell us what considerations we had for these kind of hybrid meetings. What was the latest in terms of how they're doing things?
Yeah, and Lauren, she sent me a memo yesterday and I was gonna print it and I forgot. So I will email that out to the board, but you can highlight the top items now.
And it was, go ahead.
Oh, that you have to be present to vote. Is that existing law? Is that going to change now that I remember there was some legislation going in and I don't know if that got approved or if there's something that's going to change. I'm just curious about that aspect of the law.
So essentially, the changes that happened to the law last year didn't create a lot of changes to the open meeting law outside of a pandemic. So essentially, what the changes did last year said, if we're in a pandemic situation or a Chapter 12 emergency as declared by the governor, then set of rules A apply. And that's how we have been operating by Zoom. The law does not define what constitutes a pandemic, and when the president of the board, essentially Larry has been making that call as we've been on Zoom, that there's a health pandemic that makes it unfeasible and unsafe for us to gather in our normal way. If we are not in a pandemic situation, then the changes are very minimal, honestly. So the requirements that applied previously are very similar. The biggest one being, if a manager is going to attend virtually, that manager needs to be in a public place. And we have to post notice of their place, where they're going to be during the meeting, advance of the regular meeting. So that's the issue, Pam. If we didn't post proper notice in time for that, then in my opinion, that manager, that board member, we wouldn't want to consider in attendance for voting purposes.
Oh, so you could vote if you did
If
all
we
the
noticed
rigmarole
it,
before.
yes, yeah.
Yes.
Good to know. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
might have mentioned I think I might have said last month, or maybe I just mentioned to Larry that the notice time was 10 days if you're going to be virtual, but it's not, it's 3 days. So it's the same as the regular meeting notice, but you just have to notify the location of the public.
Not to be pedantic, but is that 3 business days or just 3 calendar days?
It's probably business days, right, if it's under 7.
A week, yep.
So just to make sure that I followed, if I were to be remote, I would have to go to like a Caribou or a public library, make that known 3 days prior to the meeting and get it included into the notice.
Yeah, or, I mean, they could do their home, right, if they were willing to open it to the public. Is that correct? Is that how you define?
Oh, I guess I haven't thought of that, Tina.
Oh, yeah, I want to know that.
But I don't know that would be, I don't know that I'd consider that a public
I wasn't sure.
location.
People say that if they're willing to allow the public to attend and have it open to the public, that it could be considered, but I'm not.
Yeah, I think the home address would need to be on the notice, you know.
Or if you're on your boulevard with your computer. Sitting a toe under the sidewalk.
And I know there was a question last time about how many meetings you can attend virtually, and how 3 a year. Like, there are all these pieces that we all kind of had in our brain. Well, if you meet all those requirements, like you're in a public place and we do the noticing as required, it's unlimited. So there's no limit on how many you can attend virtually as long as you're doing all of those things. The law has a really, really narrow exception. I included it in the memo, but I can't imagine it coming up too often. The exception applies to when you could be in your home. One is it's a pandemic and your health provider has already said that you shouldn't leave your house. So that one is already in pandemic territory anyway. The other one is if you're military personnel and you're on duty. And in those exceptions where you can be in a private location, you get up to 3 a year. But again, we're operating in so that's where the 3, that's where the 3 came to mind. But otherwise, if all the requirements are met and we're not in a pandemic situation, then you have unlimited times that you can attend virtually.
Okay, great. That's what we needed to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Clarifying question. So if in the situation where it wasn't notified, does the person get viewed as a member of maybe the audience? I'm blanking on the name, so they can't post comments. They're only allowed those 4 minutes. Or, you know, the 4 minute, are they
No, you just
considered
can't
a
vote.
So you
visitor?
just can't vote.
You
Which,
just
so you
can't
can
vote.
participate in discussions and things.
Yes.
I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, just can't vote, yeah.
Right. And wouldn't be counted towards quorum
And
either.
yeah.
So.
And Lauren, just to be clear, that's whether we were on Zoom or they could be on the phone as well. Is that correct? Or does it have to be
Yes.
visual? Okay.
Yep. It's the same for phone. Yep.
I'd like to propose that when in this November, when we start thinking about things we want to bring to the MAUD meeting about potential things that MAUD could lobby for a law change, to get rid of that must be public
Well, good
requirement
news.
is ridiculous.
That is actually one of the
They've
things
already-
at the last
They've
meeting.
already done that.
All right.
But the caveat to what they're asking is that they have said that you can miss 3 meetings.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure if that was in the law or whether it was just something Mont made up.
No,
But
so,
we talked about that in the last month.
yeah, so it's on the platform for MOD. But it's not like they would pursue, you know, they're not pursuing it, but if it were to come forward, they would support it. Essentially. And I haven't heard any updates of, I don't think there's any laws that are being proposed right now around that, but I know there's a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
Doesn't Ray Bond still lobby for MAUD?
He does, and also our the executive director, Emily Jevons.
Well, I just think, especially when I'm thinking like those folks on the watershed districts up in rural areas where they have to drive 4 hours to their meeting. I mean, and there's Zoom. Come on, we've mastered Zoom. It just seems so ridiculous, especially for them.
Particularly in the winter time.
Yeah.
So it needs to go beyond being in the platform and supporting it. There needs to be some leadership.
Well, typically enough, the legislation will be way behind the technology. That's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on the attorney report?
I don't believe so.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. So we got board issues out of the way. For B, action log. Val, you want to talk about your idea here?
Yeah, so it's kind of multi-point, and I was thinking through. There's a lot of great conversation that comes in the meeting, and sometimes a member would say, "Oh," or a board member would say, "Oh, could you look into this?" or "Could you do that?" One of the recent ones, and I'm not here to pick on Brad. I know he's not here, but like for example, I know Larry and I last week were like, "Oh, when you're doing your processing on the 100-year floodplain for the Wasso Basin, could you consider the other levels or the other?" And you know, knowing Brad, he'll take that into consideration. It'll get done. So I was curious. The first part was in when we have conversations, we ask about, "Oh, can you take action for this? Is there a way that we can ensure that it's recorded and we can review it either as a designated part of the meeting or so we can at least follow it? Not that we don't want to, that we don't trust or anything like that. It's just a quick validation that we're heard, that something put into place. And I love that. I think that'd be very helpful. And then if there are, because whenever we venture something, I think an extra time in the meeting would allow us to kind of elevate it to, you know, here's the outcome we're trying to shoot for, and maybe less tactical, I think would be kind of a good play. The other, and then lastly, to tie that on, if there are road bumps or obstacles put into place from achieving said objective or action or whatever we're calling it, it'd be wonderful to hear about it, right? So, you know, is there a way that we could maybe just say at the bottom of the program says, here's the things that we heard, here's where they're at. I think that I would love that. The other piece was on the actual program statuses themselves. I really like that there's been enhancements to the statusing where they say, here's your next milestone. I think that is really helpful. I don't know if it needs to be in the board packet, but if possible, can we find ways to share with the board here, like, here's the next milestone, here's the end date, and here's some sort of progress to set end date. Once again, it doesn't have to be in the board packet. If there's a central location for it, for ones that maybe other certain board members are passionate about, we can go look for that information, understand, and actually better prepare for questions. So that's the two pieces I was thinking.
Yeah, I like the idea. I'm just thinking of experience with other groups where we listed these things that came up that we wanted to look at in the future at the end of the minutes, or it could be in a separate document. And then when we had like a lighter meeting like tonight, we could pull one of those off. I know you've given us in the past, here's when we do budget, here's when we do other things. That would be another way to do it, would be to have that handed out, which I've also seen done at every meeting, updated, and then have some, you know, a place at the bottom for future things that aren't assigned a slide yet.
Sure.
Some things we've put into a workshop because it's too big. Other things we could slip into a lighter month, but it is really a good way to not lose track of stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
I definitely forget. I had to go back and find another example, frankly. Just to well, and the one that, and I talked to Tina a little about it, is so the watershed, the wetlands workshop. There were a couple of things I brought up, but we didn't really clarify the urgency, importance, what timeline we wanted in a couple of them when I went back and watched them. So maybe this would also help clear up and communicate our sense of urgency as well. We could help with that.
Yeah, I think those are really good ideas on that. I like what you were saying too. So there's kind of two things. There's like next meeting follow-up, you know, like things that we would expect to see next meeting. And then there's things, you know, at some point in time, we would like to know more about something. So I'm open to how you would like to see that. If you would like to see it in the packet every month, or kind of a standing document that gets updated as we go along. I think it'd be helpful. And we started doing this, and we still, you know, at the end of a meeting, if we haven't been here too long, you'll go through and say, okay, what things did we say we were going to come back with, you know? And I think that's really helpful too, just to make sure we're capturing everything. But
yeah, maybe the best time to do that, because sometimes we do get a little weary at the end of the meeting, is that when you go back, I presume somebody goes back through the recording of this.
Yeah.
And if things like that come up, if they document it and can put it in a little table, that we can decide if we want to just send it to the board, or whether we want to increase. It's probably best to put it in the meeting minutes, so it's documented.
Yep. That's what I was saying. If it was said in a meeting, it should be in the minutes, and then we can carry that
into. It could be
into
part of your report, just this one page of.
Yeah.
Or it could be added to that other yearly thing. I think, why don't you play around with it and see what makes sense when you look at the list of stuff.
I like the idea of maintaining the list, and then also it gives us the opportunity to prioritize when, you know, we're gonna have a, you know, Tina might say, you know, we expect next meeting's gonna be low. Why don't we take a look at the priority list and see what we can throw in?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And we've done that with more global things like alum use.
Right.
You know, all that kind of stuff.
That's a great idea.
Our presentation requests.
Yeah.
I really like it because it allows all of us to keep each other accountable as well. And I think that's an important part. And then it's not just all on Tina to remember everything. Now, granted, I know, Larry, you watched the video and go back and check the minutes, and I had to go through and read and be like, okay, here's the ones that, okay, I don't know if this one got.
Yeah.
So it would help.
I think that's a great idea. So I will come up with an idea to share with you and see.
Okay, we'll share that at the
And
next
then the
meeting.
second half of what Val said about the project and program tracking. You know, I talked to Larry and I've talked to Val a little bit about this too, and Brandon and I have discussed, we have very similar ideas and thoughts on how we can make this look, but we agree that this would be helpful, not only for you, but for our staff. And between Bar and I, you know, just all that information is in the scope summaries, and we have it all there. It's just, you'd have to go to, you know, 15 individual documents to find it. So, you know, what Brandon and I have talked about is putting that onto one chart. I
just discovered Gantt charts.
Yes. So I said Gantt, Brandon said Gantt, we've all said
Yeah, I
Gantt
think I was
charts.
gonna say, I think we've all used these project management charts, so we have one place to go. I gotta worry about this now, or I don't, that's in 3 months.
I remember when supply chain impacted our company, it became very important to start listing, here's the hurdles, or here's a success that we had, we found this vendor. And so it just is nice, quick summary. And then it actually helps us flag where to focus, which I love.
And we don't lose track too, because especially around the belting resiliency studies and the sub-studies and the projects that come out of those studies. And, you know, we've got a lot going on, and we're picking off projects, but there's still so many projects in there that we've earmarked for future, so I think
Okay.
just being able to keep all
That'd be
track of that.
great.
is- Yeah,
Thank you for entertaining it.
yeah,
That'll help organize things for the board. Okay, so the takeaway from this is you're gonna give us
the action log.
the action point, our first action point, almost.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? That is really a good segue into the next item.
The administrator review process.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. There you
because
go.
that can be a goal for
Yeah,
2020.
there you go.
There you go.
I'll write
Yeah,
that down.
Are you ready for that part?
I am, unless
Okay.
there's any other discussion on the action law.
Okay, so I think y'all know I was gonna do a ride along with Cliff while he did all of his stuff on the evaluation process, and that didn't happen. So I'm trying to fast track it because we're already into April. But I want to balance completing the review fairly and accurately and stuff. I had a really good talk with Cliff. He was in sunny Florida, where it was warm.
Yes.
But
Forgotten about
anyway,
us already.
yeah, he gave me good feedback on Tina's performance, and also we talked about process ideas, kind of past and future, which was really helpful. So I've got a plan. I want to run it by all of you, and it's mostly consistent with the past process, but with some tweaks. So first, Tina is sending the 2021 summary and achievements, accomplishments. Also, we always get that executive criteria form, and I've asked her to add feedback on 2 sections that we always ask her about, but aren't on the form, and that's the diversity, equity, inclusion, and also professional development. She's going to summarize where she is on the 2021 goals and suggest some for 2022, and give us her current job description and the compensation information for job class. We usually get those 2. And then I've also asked for information on her employees' review process and what the raises have been, so we can compare. Then I've started talking to Tracy, who's going to advise on a process to set up a Zoom meeting with the board members to go over all of this and to make sure that's all kosher. And we'll send out a Survey Monkey. I'll work with you on that to schedule it.
Wait, we need to have a meeting to just say that's okay? I think that what you
We're
just
not
said is
gonna
perfectly
meet it.
fine.
No, a meeting to go over all that information.
Oh, but not,
And
that's separate from the
decide-
review?
That's part of it. And then we'll decide, we'll make a decision on the kinds of feedback and what the compensation is going to be. And then,
In other words, we meet as a board without Tina to talk about this. And then, go ahead.
well, then I was gonna say, I've already gotten feedback from Cliff. I think I can do it informally with any of you that want to before we meet, and we can be ready to go to just go through everything. Tina and I are gonna meet Monday, so we've got a few days after getting all this, because we're getting it very soon.
Am I sending that just to you, or I'm sending that to everybody?
You could send it to everybody, because
Oh,
that would
okay.
save me having to send it.
Okay,
to
I didn't,
everybody,
yeah, okay,
Which is better.
sounds good.
That's great.
And
And-
that is non-public information.
Right.
Right.
And that'd be good to put right in the title. So when we have our Zoom meeting, I think we can keep it to an hour, but we can go over the feedback and discuss performance. We can make a decision on compensation, decision on the goals. With all this background, it should be pretty good. Then I wanna make sure that we talk just a little bit about the process going forward, what we're gonna do from now on. One thing is we need to set it up so it starts sooner. It would be really good to have it done towards the end of the year or at least January. So we kind of need to think about that. And one of the things Cliff and I talked about is he knows the staff and is in here informally. And even though I tried to get over as much as I could pre-pandemic, it wasn't as much as he would. So Larry's idea, which Cliff thought was great, was to at least meet quarterly. And maybe we even do a monthly lunch or something, just so there's a more ongoing information and feedback and that kind of thing with me. So then the other thing we need to decide is when we meet with Tina to let her know what she's getting, if we want all of us to do that like we've done in the past, or just one or two of us. So that would be my agenda for our Zoom meeting. And then the last thing is I do a letter for a personnel file. So I think we can complete all this within a couple of weeks with Tracy or Lorian's help and us having one quick meeting. So the one thing I need feedback on tonight from you guys is what's the best time to have a meeting like that? Is it like right at the end of the workday to not ruin your evening? Is it better to have like we do these at 6:30 so we can put together a survey monkey or something in the next couple of weeks?
I'm on sabbatical this semester, so my schedule's a little bit more flexible, but I'm still working 50 hours a week. But I
It's easier to work in.
Yeah, so I'm just saying I don't have to have it in evenings. I guess I would prefer afternoon or early evening myself.
You said that is Friday afternoon is the only time I could do something next week. But after work is can make it work.
When are you usually done?
You don't want me to answer that question. I would normally be working.
I know you work 24/7.
No, I 5:30 is something.
Okay.
And then preferably not Thursdays. So really anywhere from Monday through Wednesday I can make it happen, or Friday afternoon is the only other time.
Okay, so we can put together something, figure out some dates to put in a survey monkey. So any other thoughts? Kind of.
If I'm understanding, it's we're making some minor modifications to our normal review, but only we're going to do it now without Tina. And then it seems to me that then when we meet with Tina, it's going to be a very short meeting, and maybe we could just meet, 20 minutes before a scheduled meeting. And
yeah, we could do that if we all want to be at it, or we can do like other boards do, which is designate a couple people to do that. So
that's
fine
what
with
we
me
anyway, and write
decide.
the letter, and that's fine.
I think that's the basic idea is that we meet as a board by ourselves. We do whatever we're going to do to Tina, and then maybe Diane just meets with her and goes over that stuff and then documents.
The only thing I see though is that we don't get, if Tina had something she wanted to convey, or if the board was conveying something to her and she wanted to respond, then it might be important for all the board to hear what her concerns were, or.
And some of that we might get to if there is anything in just our meeting, because that's what Cliff and Tina did in the past, as I understood it. And then he'd bring it and everybody would be here. So yeah, I think we can let's just kind of go with it and see how the flow is. But I think we can keep the meeting time down. We'll have the same good information. 3 of us have been through this before and I know the drill. So
I'm gonna miss the box dinner.
Well, if I could interject just on some points of process. So the board can certainly close the meeting for this purpose of evaluating an employee's performance. We have to notice it still publicly. And then, of course, my next thought from that is it appropriate then that it's on Zoom, or are we under those same open meeting law requirements, even though it's a closed meeting? But typically what we do is we notice when we close like a general meeting, we notice it, we state the reasons, and then we close for that discussion. So I think that's something that our office needs to think through a little bit more particularly. I just, Pam, you might have your boxed dinner after all. That might end up being my suggestion.
And all of us will be virtual, and we all have to go to a public space and open our laptops.
Well, it's a closed meeting though, so you don't have to be.
Oh, you can't be in a public space, but it's a requirement. We all have to be on our
I know. How do you do that? And maybe for a closed meeting, the open, I mean, we're already closing. So maybe we don't need to abide by that statute. I just need to look at it more closely to make sure that we're following it correctly. The other thing, it's certainly the board can close the meeting for this purpose. The statute does say, though, that if the individual being evaluated, Tina, requests that it's open, then it must be open. So I wanted to let the board and Tina know that it's explicit in the statute.
When you say open, open to the public?
It says open, so I think that would mean that it's no longer a closed meeting and it is open to the public. In either, well, not in the open meeting, although we record them anyway, but I also want the board to know if it's a closed meeting, that the meeting does need to be recorded, audio recorded.
Oh, okay.
And that's why those questions were number 2 on my to-do list.
So we'll work with you, Diane. We'll get it figured out so that
Because we can't even do our Survey Monkey until we know if it has to be in person here or somewhere, because then we would naturally want to butt it up against another. Right. If I have understood this board's feelings over the years. So let me know as soon as we can.
Okay, will do.
In the meantime, Tina and I will do all the grunt work. Get that all done. As much as we can before then.
I did want to comment on the whole mentality of meeting more frequently. So one of the practices that a gentleman to look up to at work has said is really the end of your performance should be 5 minutes.
Right.
That's really less than 5 minutes. So I like the idea of multiple meetings. I'd caveat it with something I was going to bring up at the end, where it'd be wonderful just to actually see more people periodically. So if you're open to like maybe a quarterly dinner or something, but yeah, we can talk about that later.
Well, and that is something we can talk about, is some either more social things or opening up before 6:20 for anybody who wants to come early and catch up a little.
Meet at a restaurant and discuss.
It's public, yeah.
It's public.
So
We've done
all
that
good
before.
stuff.
We used to like go to Perkins or Embers or something.
Well, since I've been here, but
In the old days, I have some recollection of sitting around at the board at like the breakfast diner. I don't remember what board, but we did.
Good.
Okay, so you have.
Might
what
have
you
been
need.
for that. We might have
What
done
I
a
need.
breakfast meeting to describe it.
I have what I need, and we'll just kind of work it out as we go.
Okay, the next item then is audit and fraud. I love that. We're going through the audit right now with Red Path, is that right?
Yep.
And they did call, they interviewed me, I think they interviewed Diane about, it was kind of weird. They said that they've been asked to look to alert us, I guess, to looking for fraud. And
it's part of the state process for
Part of the state
public
process of
audits
doing
to
so it kind
request
of, I'd never thought about it before. Frankly, what I told them was I didn't have any concerns, but I also remember in my working life that fraud popped up in places that nobody knew before. So my question is, when they finish the audit, can they come and talk to us about
Absolutely.
They've never been to talk to us before.
So they've always offered.
They've always offered, we've never accepted.
Yes, but I think it'd be good if you specifically say you are interested in a topic like that.
Yeah.
Or if you want them to go over the audit, kind of go walk through the audit, which they are happy to do as well. So if that's of
Right.
interest,
Yeah.
You can just let me know what your interests are and I can make sure they
Yeah, and
present it.
it's not anything, I just like to know the parameters, because as a board, we have a level of responsibility with
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
So we ought to know what the rules and regulations are around what we want to do and what we should be looking. Like I told them that what I go through, the thing that I do, and I'm not looking for fraud, interestingly enough. I'm looking for, all of a sudden somebody pops up in the checklist they got a lot of money and I wonder who they are.
Mhm.
And
That's good,
so
yeah.
that's kind of the informal process I use. But I'd like to know, is there more we should be doing? Do we need training on this or something to make sure that we know what our responsibilities are as a board?
Yep, I think that's good.
Yeah, they were interested in fraud and conflicts. And just, we had a real good discussion. And remind me, do we sign conflict statements every year?
Lauren,
some
is that
boards
part of the
do.
oath or is that not?
We would have to look again at the oath, but my inclination was to say no, Diane, that isn't something that's signed yearly. But we will be administering the oath next month, so we'll have a good
Next month.
check-in at that time.
And it's covered in our financial disclosures too, that we have to file.
You have to
every
file
year.
those, yeah.
So I'm assuming we're kind of covered on that. And I'm not interested in having them go through the whole audit report, although maybe you are. But I am interested, since this fraud thing came up, I'd love to know why. Give us examples of fraud in this kind of a setting. And do they have any little training modules on it? Because that would help us either identify it or defend ourselves if staff and maybe board had access to this training. I did talk up our attorney relationship, that we work so closely together, and that you have a really good relationship with them and that we do too. And so there's good open communication about that. And talked a little bit about my experience in investigating and serving on panels on lawyers board stuff, which includes fraud and conflicts and financial misdealings and that kind of stuff. So I think we have a lot of assets as a board and consultants and staff. So I just want to know what they want us to do. I mean, they don't give every contractor a lie detector test when they come through. And staff do so many inspections and there's such a process. I would like to know what they're after. And anyway, that'll help
Can I just
cover us. It
clear-
was interesting.
Can I clear for the record that they weren't concerned about a specific fraud incident? This is a
Right.
screening that they do
I know,
as part. I
but
just
I don't
wanted to
know
make
what
sure
it
that was.
means.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I don't know what it means in this context.
So they do
Yes.
contact board members and they also pull aside randomly staff as well to ask about fraud concerns that anybody might have. So they usually pick 2 or 3 staff as
And
well.
I told Larry, all of our answers were awesome.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if our
Yeah.
auditor was like 18 or if they really
She
were.
is younger, but she's not quite.
So
Yeah.
anyway, so
That's good.
we had some good discussion.
So they will be publishing the audit this month. And so I typically would have it in the May board packet and that's when they could come and visit as well. So I will let them know that you're interested in them.
Yeah.
And specifically around fraud. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. Wetlands policy, you said in the administrator's report, we'll be doing that next month.
Yep, you'll get more
From
information.
that, I may send you a couple of questions that I have.
Great.
So we can get those answered rather than fiddling around with them here.
Sounds good.
But that'll be good. Continuing on with that, and that was a big part of the Victoria Shores thing too. CAC representation. Cliff went to the meetings.
Yep, so he wasn't necessarily an official liaison. We don't have that designated anywhere in our bylaws or anything, but it has been nice over the years. Marge had attended them as well.
Marge used to be on the CAC, didn't she?
She was on the CAC, and then when she was on the board, then she became a liaison to the CAC. And then Cliff stepped into that role over the last year. So I do think it's nice to have a board member if there's one of you that's interested in being a part of that group, to attend the meetings and represent the board with that group.
I don't understand the the responsibilities that entails, or how frequent they meet, frankly?
So they meet about 6 times a year. It's not necessarily every other month. So they have certain tasks that are they're charged with around like the Watershed Excellence Awards. So they might meet a little more frequently. They also, those are the regular meetings, and then they also do planting projects. You know, they're doing cleanups and other activities as well.
It's more flying the flag for the board more than anything else.
And bringing stuff back.
Exactly,
bringing stuff
coming back and forth.
show
I
them
mean,
interested.
It's helped that we've gotten more reports from them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had assumed it was a vice president job, so I looked at their next meetings and I could only go to 2 of the 4. So I think either we assign it to a board member, or maybe we start rotating them, or something else. I don't know.
Not to say we need a decision tonight, but maybe you and I could coordinate on which ones in the next 4. I'd like just to understand more. It's easier to see where it is.
Once, yeah, sure. Okay.
Have
I'll
you
look at the
participated,
schedule.
Pam, in the CAC stuff?
I have not.
Just curious. Yeah, I was trying to, I might, maybe if there's one that you can't go to, I can find some time.
Well, I think it's a good idea to let them know we're not only interested in getting a report back, but we're interested in seeing who these people are.
Yeah, and interacting with them. And
And how have they done on filling all their vacancies?
good. Yeah, I think we're full CAC right now. So,
Excellent.
yeah, we had some good outreach last year, and we're able to fill some of the cities that we didn't have covered. I believe they're still meeting virtually, so I think that next meeting will be virtual as well.
Okay.
And Brandon's going to be there, right? Brandon, are you there for the next one? Talk about flood risk studies.
I think this one is Aaron
Oh, Aaron. Okay.
tackling that one.
We were at the last one. That's right.
I was at the last one. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. West Fatness Lake, we've been over that. Any further thoughts? Good. Now we go to the presentations. There are 9. Administrators report.
Yeah, so I have my meetings attended. It was ramping up in March. And now this week was crazy too. So I think we're just in meeting season. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything about any of those meetings. Maybe I'll just point out a couple of things. The city of St. Paul hired a new water resource coordinator. Wes Saunders Pierce was their coordinator previously, and he went to the DNR, I believe. So they've hired a new gentleman. His name is Andrew Hogg. We work pretty closely with their water resource coordinator, especially because the city of St. Paul is such a structured, siloed, that water resource coordinator really brings together the different departments of a large city like St. Paul. And so especially around our work around the Ames Lake for flood risk management, we're going to need to do a lot of work with him to get him up to speed on where we're at and kind of where we're going in the future with that. So that was a good meeting. Andrew I actually know, and Dave knows him too, because both Dave and I have served on the Shingle Creek West Mississippi Watershed boards. And he was the city engineer at Brooklyn Center. So some continuity. He's coming over the east side now. So let's see. And so you'll see that we had an introduction meeting with him and then actually a flood risk meeting as well. So Gold Line, I do want to talk about that, and I'm glad Brandon's here too. So we've been continuing to meet. So if you might recall, a few months back, we talked about funding the work under I-94 to enlarge the pipes for future flood projects. The discussion has come to a new section of the pipe where that pipe connects into the pipe under Hudson Boulevard, which is actually part of the Gold Line project. So we have MnDOT's project, we have the Gold Line project. The question came up as to how they were going to connect into this old pipe that's under Hudson Road, which would be a responsibility of the city of Oakdale.
You're talking about between Tanner's Lake and.
Battle Creek, yes, yep, thank you. So to throw another entity into the mix, the city of Oakdale does own that pipe under Hudson Boulevard. It's part of their infrastructure because Hudson Boulevard is owned by the city of Oakdale.
Even though land falls in between Oakdale and.
Yeah,
That's
that's
weird.
part of Oakdale right there. City of Oakdale was brought in very late in this process. And so now they're asking the city to contribute funds to improve this pipe under the road. And from our point of view, we don't need that pipe to be replaced. It would be nice since they're gonna be tearing it up for the Gold Line project. And if they were to do that and the city wanted to replace it, we would again upsize it in order to meet our needs. But it is something we could do later in time. But the city of Oakdale is interested in doing that work now. They see the benefit of doing that now, but they're saying that they don't have the funds available. And so what they're preliminarily asking, and I wanted to bring this up now because we're actually meeting with Oakdale next week to discuss it, is whether or not we would help them front that money and they would pay us back over time, probably a 5-year.
Is it, yeah, because it wasn't budgeted for.
Right. Yep.
And we would upsize maybe.
And we would upsize. And so we would
Barr would
contribute to that
recommend
as well, to upsize. And then we would be reimbursed for the work. That would be the city's responsibility.
Sounds like a win-win.
For a pipe.
And we've done this before.
Yeah, we've
right?
done this before. And in fact, like with the city of Little Canada for
Yeah.
Ryan Drive,
Yeah.
we did this. Where we fronted it. They are paying us back in lump sum, but this case would be a payment plan of some sort.
That makes sense.
So if there's no objections to that, Brandon, did I hit everything or is there anything I missed on?
No, that's a very good summary, Tina. I think the one point that I would like to add is when we brought the preliminary cost estimate to the board a few months ago, when we were working with MnDOT for what that cost would be to upsize the pipe. At that point in time, MnDOT's cost estimate did include increasing capacity below the interstate and Hudson Boulevard as well. And so that cost for increasing the pipe had been built into the numbers that were presented to you. So the cost that we're talking about now is that cost that would be associated with replacing that pipe in kind only below Hudson Boulevard. So it is an additional cost, but the study area, that incremental cost for upsizing had been presented to the board previously.
And if I'm remembering correctly, that all that money doesn't hit this calendar year, right? If I remember the conversation
Right, this
correctly. And so-
construction will be happening, well, the Gold Line construction will probably happen next year and then the 94 work will be the year after, I believe, or 2 years after.
Good, yeah, the only reason I ask is because the spending rate that Paige has set forth continues for the rest of the things.
And this would be a different pot of money. We would
I
pull this
figured
from
so.
flood risk.
I figured so, I just was worried, like, oh.
Yeah. Yep.
So it would come on
Flood
flood
risk,
risk,
yeah.
which is pretty good
It's
size.
hefty.
Yeah, we'd be doing okay there. So,
Okay.
yep, and the money that we'd be fronting Oakdale was in the range of 100,000. Was that correct, Brandon? Or was that including the upsize?
No, that's the money that we would be fronting Oakdale based on MnDOT's current estimate for where they are in design right now. So MnDOT is coordination between the MnDOT project and the Gold Line project is ongoing. And so they're partway through design. So that's their current estimate.
What do you need from us? Do you need a motion authorizing you to say what we can front the money or put it on
I think
next
if you'd like
month's
to,
agenda? Or
I think if you're willing to do that tonight, you could direct staff to continue discussions with Oakdale around providing funds for this piece of the project.
Yeah, that sounds, yeah.
And then I can let Oakdale know.
As long as we're doing all that work down there, it means we'll do it right.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
you're good to go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll tell you the agreements.
Right.
That was the discussion was actually around who would hold agreements with who and how this would all
And that
work.
gets
It was-
complicated if somebody comes to the party late.
Yeah. yeah, it'll
But
be.
that's good, they came late and they were on board, so. That doesn't always happen.
A little help, yes. Yeah.
May I ask how the flood meetings went for the different cities?
Yeah, I think both of them were well received. Like we said, the city of St. Paul one, it was really here's a lot of information that to get up to speed on. So I know you, Brandon, provided a lot of information to Andrew at St. Paul. And we're gonna need to follow up a few times, but the Maplewood one, and I think it's in the PSR too, but that was really encouraging because our future plans seem to align with theirs really closely. He kept saying, well, we're actually going to do a project here. And we're like, well, that's great. So there was a couple of moments where that was really, the synergy was really great. I don't know, Brandon, do you want to add anything to those?
No, I think it was great. I think there were two, I mean, like you mentioned, Tina, there were two slightly different tones. St. Paul is getting up to speed, right? And so getting familiar with all of the work that we have done over the years. And then we're going to be continuing to work with St. Paul on next steps, data gathering, and moving forward in the Ames Lake area. Maplewood, though, their staff had been familiar with what we were doing. And so that one was a much more forward-looking meeting where we started looking at what is the city's CIP and how does that line up with areas where we want to do projects. And then even to the point of, okay, what does our schedule look like relative to their planned CIP currently, and how do the schedules line up? So that was a very productive meeting. We committed to following up with both cities. The follow-ups are a little bit different in terms of St. Paul. It's continuing to provide information, and Maplewood, it's more of a data request and getting what we need to get off the ground and get several of these studies moving forward.
That's really wonderful. I was curious if I know we will, but if you do hear feedback points on like their stances that differ from I'd love to hear about them, just out of curiosity. That's good. It sounds like they went really well.
Yeah, you'll definitely be hearing more too about what comes out of those meetings. One other meeting, I guess, as I'm looking at the list that I think was interesting was the Washington County Healthy Communities meeting. This is something that an organization called, I think it's Hope, I'm forgetting the organization's name, but they were contracted by Washington County to look at, there's a lot of equity and diversity and how that intersects with healthy communities, and their case study is the right word, but the area of focus that they're doing is going to be landfall. And so they've started really collecting demographic information and looking at the community of landfall. And we're one of the, I mean, there's a whole range of people that were part of that meeting, but the Watershed is one of them as a piece of the healthy community, especially because landfall is right on the lake as well. So on Tanner's Lake. So I'm not really sure what's to come of that, but it was an informational meeting about their process and the information they've collected around demographics. I think it'll be good, and it's potential that a project could come out of that too as part of that program. So.
When something gets started like that, Tina, do you just stick with it, or do you then delegate it to somebody on staff?
In that meeting, there was like 4 of us that were there, and so I think it kind of depends on what direction it goes. If it feels project-based, Paige would be the lead on that. If it feels more goal and diversity, equity, kind of higher picture, then I would probably stay involved. And then, it's actually a very young population that lives and with a lot of kids, and so Sage was involved, so it was multifaceted.
Interesting. Anything from MAWA?
Anything from MAWA? So we had a spring in-person meeting as part of that, the legislative days. There's a lot going on with MAWA right now because it's legislative season. There's some things that there's a lot of discussions at MAWA. So this is the administrators group, right? So the ministers group are looking at how we can provide feedback to the MOD board on interactions with MOD and MAWA and all the watersheds that are part of MOD. So we have met as an executive committee to provide some strategic plan comments, because you should have received a survey from MOD regarding strategic. Did you receive that? Okay. Strategic planning. So the MAWA executive committee is also reviewing that and providing comments. But the executive committee meets about once every other month or so, and to just keep the pulse on things.
You guys feel MOD's listening to you? Nope, I don't think so.
There's some things with the MOD board right now that are a little frustrating, I would say. It's just finding our place where the MOD board sees the administrator's input. It's not, they listen, but I don't know that they take it. There's a lot of, I would say, questions around transparency. And I would say that as our board, we should even talk about that, because the MOD board itself doesn't have a lot of transparency. They don't post their meeting information. You can attend, but you don't know what they're going to talk about. So there's not a feedback loop, a good communication stream right now.
Aren't they under the same? They're not.
So they're not under the same, and I don't know all the details, but they're a 501, not a C3, but a C4, I think is the designation. So they're not.
Transparency builds confidence. That's not
exactly, yeah. So there's some things as administrators that we would expect them to act similarly to our board, how our boards act. So, nothing major, but just some things that I think are kind of eating away. There's been some concern about watersheds choosing not to participate in MOD, and why that is, and what they're doing to encourage more participation from some watersheds.
Are these up north watershed?
There's some, although the lower Minnesota River is one that chose not to this year, and then there's some north. And some are very small and have very small budgets, and that's part of it. They don't see the value, and
they don't need another organization to go to.
Right.
Yeah. We're fortunate to have the organization we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
To say the least.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else from the administrative report?
That was just the meetings attended. Let's see. So we talked about the wetland things, the office COVID update. This was our first full week.
All right.
Yeah, so far so good.
So daring.
Yeah, it's been really nice to be here together, and just have that face-to-face interaction on a whim, even, not just because it had to be set up that way. Yeah, it's so far so good. And this seems to be working well in person board meetings, so that's exciting too.
Actually feels really nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, anything on project and program status reports?
I had a question on the Wasso Basin area stuff. So we reviewed that, I thought, last time. And one of the things that was requested was, or planned, was some work on defining what flood is for manufactured homes. And I just didn't see any update on that. I know that they're doing their assessment, and I was curious if they went with the FEMA definition, which has a lower bound, or if they went with a new definition.
Yeah, and I was wondering, because FEMA seemed to only have criteria for new build areas, and why we couldn't look at that for older ones.
Well, they had new build for like there seemed to be stringent ones and then existing conditions.
Yeah.
There was like you had to go over some sort of floors, and I can't remember all the details.
It's a great question. It's something that we're working on wrapping our arms around at this moment. So you're right. We're digesting the FEMA guidance. As part of this data gathering phase, we have been reaching out to manufacturer housing builders to make sure we understand the codes, the specifications, the requirements that they follow when they're building new manufactured homes. We're working on reviewing city ordinances where there are manufactured housing developments within the district. And one of our next steps here as part of this project is a stakeholder outreach where we, for the Wasso Basin and North Star Estates area in particular, meeting with the city of Little Canada, discussing those findings, making sure that what we're finding is consistent with what the city's understanding is. And then following that meeting, the plan is to bring that information back to the board and have a discussion then about how we are going to be defining flood risk within the North Star Estates area, but maybe more broadly within a manufactured housing development. So that's kind of the path forward at this point.
Thank you.
Okay. I had one or two questions on natural resources.
Me too.
Oh,
Same.
Bill, are you available?
Bill, are you awake?
Wake up, Bill.
He hopped on pretty quick, so.
I am here.
So first question is, I got a letter in the mail from the Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District telling me we're going to do a controlled burn on Wetland A. The last time I got a letter like this, which was about 3 years ago, I got it from the park board. So my question is, why isn't the park board sending us a letter instead of the Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District?
Yeah, well, we're partnering with Ramsey County to do burns around Wetland A, and we offered to take on that responsibility, sending out those letters, and they agreed to that. So we're just, I guess, being a good partner and doing that task, and we are very efficient in doing that because we've been setting out those burn announcements for 15 plus years, so we have it down pat.
And so they not only got sent to Wetland A residents, but also to other areas that were burning this.
Right. So all of our sites, that's kind of standard operating procedure for us, is to notify residents around the burn sites that we have scheduled for this coming spring.
It's a good letter, that's not the point. I just was surprised that it came from us.
Right.
And Parks and Rec, which are normally the ones that send it out.
Well, we're doing the burn, right? In partnership with them, or are we?
Oh, yeah, so we're leading the burn, and they're going to be on site providing assistance.
Well, Larry took my comment, which was, it was a nice letter. So I'm done. Val?
It was just surprising.
Mhm.
Okay. On the Phelan plantings.
Oh,
sorry.
you have Martin.
Oh, if you have more questions, it's okay.
Go ahead.
Well,
He normally covers mine. Go
yeah. Oh. Go ahead.
It's my last question. I was curious about the total funding requests on the restoration on the Keller area, the Keller Regional Park.
No, it was okay.
Huh? Oh, was that?
It was the same basic question I had, yeah.
Yeah. Was there a need to approve, or is there any concern with that? Okay.
No, that's already built into our budgets.
Yeah, I wasn't certain.
Right.
I'm still learning the whole treasure.
Yeah, where all this money comes from and goes to.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else have any?
Yeah, I had one, so I'm looking at the Keller Restoration, and we did a lot on that golf course, and I see there's a big purple blob in there, and I'm assuming that's the pond in there. But my concern with that, question is, not really concern, is that I understand that that whole area is going to be redeveloped into a residential area. And I just want to make sure that we don't invest some money doing something, and then next year they're going to bulldoze it. And maybe I'm wrong, I thought I saw something that Keller.
No, it's a
golf
different.
course, is that a
Hillcrest.
Different.
Oh,
Different.
Hillcrest is getting
It's the one
converted,
that
not
Keller.
Keller.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
Never mind.
Feels like that's.
give me a heart attack, Pam.
Bill, you okay?
Yeah, right. No, we're good there, Pam. We're,
Only problem I
yeah.
had with that was trying to discern the color.
Yeah.
It was, I took every single computer and way that I had to try to figure out where those, the subtle color difference,
Oh,
to where it was gonna, I think I finally figured it out.
Oh, we could have
Not that
sent
it makes
it,
any
yeah, it's
difference,
a
I'm not
separate
gonna go out
document.
and do it, I was just curious.
Yeah.
yeah, we're basically filling the gaps and adding on to that corridor natural area, which is really exciting. So
Yeah.
it's great opportunity. And again, we're partnering with Ramsey County on that effort and doing a lot of the labor ourselves to keep the costs down. So that's why that $75,000 number is so low. Usually, we'd be looking at probably over $200,000 to pull off a project like that. So we're saving a lot of money.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Anybody got anything else? In that case, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move we adjourn.
Second?
Can I say one?
Okay, go ahead.
Just really quickly on the communication outreach stuff. They did their first user type of testing.
You were a user.
So I did want to say
yeah.
that they've made reasonable progress on it and I'm going to ask to be part of the second round because they only do a couple. So it's a skeleton piece. But they seem to be focused on improving search functionality, which I would greatly appreciate. So I'm excited about the next one. So I just thought some of the feedback that this board has had, you can see it influencing the design direction, which was appreciated.
Good, yeah.
So that's all I wanted, just is a comment.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate that you are doing part of that process too.
I love this process,
Yeah.
so the next one, just let me know.
Yeah.
There we go.
Sorry, I don't mind, you can remove.
Remove.
It's been moved.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay. All right.
Do we have to vote?
No, we just.
We're adjourned.
We're done.
We just close the meeting. Once.
Okay, are we done recording?
I will stop.
Okay.
How do you guys think the in-person versus the virtual stuff went for the meeting?
It went really well in my opinion.
Yeah.
I could see you all and hear you just fine.
Yep.